In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make plastic worms. The plastic worm began in 1949 in an Ohio kitchen. Nick and Cosma Cream were experimenting with rubber materials. Ultimately, they developed the cream wiggle worm, and it would change bass fishing forever. We now have super crisp CNC molds, colorant, glitters, different types of plastic, all kinds of different options to make exactly what you want. The plastic worm can be fished year-round in multiple different ways: the Texas rig, the wacky rig, the drop shot, and many, many more. So stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm showing you how to make these plastic worms on your own for yourself. In today's video, we're going to be using the 6-inch and the 4.5-inch Gusano mold. It's an awesome plastic worm mold that you can use for your Texas rig. You can use it for your wacky rigs. You can use it for your drop shots, Carolina rig, whatever you want. There's also laminate plates that you could buy in order to make 2-color baits if you don't have a dual injector. You can also make 2-color baits using that dual injector with this Gusano mold. And while you're watching this video, there's going to be a lot of different products that you're going to need in order to make these plastic worms. I'm going to have a product list down in the description of today's video, so that way it's the one-stop place where you can go to figure out exactly what you need to make the same worms that I'm making in today's video. Along with that product list is going to be my Dual Molds affiliate link. If you go to the Dual Molds website to buy anything, please use that affiliate link so that way they know that I sent you. One of the first things that you're going to need when you're going to make these plastic worms is Plastisol. Plastisol is this white, milky liquid that I'm pouring into that glass cup right now. The Plastisol, once it's heated, ends up getting to a more clear, thicker consistency than what you see on the screen right now. I like to use a soft Plastisol when I'm making my plastic worms because you want to get the most action possible out of those plastic worms, and the softer the formula, the more action you're going to get. Got to make sure you heat your Plastisol up to 350 degrees, or at least around 350 degrees. There's a chemical reaction that takes place inside the Plastisol, and once that reaction takes place, it's going to allow your baits to solidify and not stay tacky. Now, when you're heating the Plastisol, something that I like to do is heat it up really slow. I take it out of the microwave multiple times throughout my time heating the Plastisol up. I take it out, I stir it up, so that way I get even heat throughout my cup of Plastisol. This is really important because if you heat it up unevenly, some of your Plastisol is going to end up burnt, and it starts to stink, and it starts to yellow, and it really messes up your colors. So generally when I'm heating my Plastisol, I do it in 1-minute intervals, and as it gets closer and closer to that temp, I slow it down and go in 30-second intervals, and I make sure to stir my Plastisol in between each time I'm heating it. Another item you're going to want to consider adding into your Plastisol is salt. A lot of baits on the market have salt in them. Some people don't want salt in them because they want them to float a little bit more. Some people do want salt in there because it helps the bait sink a little bit. Other people think that it helps the fish hold on to your bait a little bit longer. I like a little bit of salt in my baits. I don't like a ton of salt unless it's a specific type of bait that I'm making, like a stick bait or something like that, where that salt gives it the ability to be cast, and then it also gives it the sink rate that we're looking for. In today's video, I have 2 cups of Plastisol inside of my cup, so I'm going to be doing a 1/4 cup of salt into that Plastisol, so it ends up being 1/8 of a cup of salt for 1 cup of Plastisol. As you're heating up your Plastisol, you want to make sure that you're taking temperatures along the way so you don't overheat it and you don't underheat it. I like the infrared thermometer because it just makes getting that temperature very, very easy. And again, you want to make sure you get up to around that 350 degrees. So for these worms, I'm going for a watermelon candy type of color. So that means we're going to be adding a bunch of different flake in there. I've got black, blue, green, and purple flake that we're going to be adding into our cup of Plastisol next. I'm going to add those flakes in first and then add my colorant. Some people do it the other way around, but I want to get that flake in there and then adjust my colorant dependent upon the amount of flake that I have in my worms. Some people go and add in their colorant first and get their green or whatever base color they're going for and then add in their flake. But a lot of times those flakes end up changing the color that you're going for. So I'm going to add that flake in first and then get my green watermelon candy kind of color dialed into where I want it based upon the amount of flake that I have inside my cup. Your salt will always sink to the bottom of your Plastisol in between pours and in between heating. So every time you take it out or go to pour a new bait, you're definitely going to want to stir it to get that salt all throughout your bait and all throughout the Plastisol. So now what we're going to do is take a 1/4 teaspoon measuring spoon and get some of our black flake. We're going to add that in. I like going with black first because black will darken your Plastisol up. The next color that I'm going to do is blue flake. Again, it's a 1/4 teaspoon. Stir it on in there. Now we're going to be adding in the green. I'm going to go a little bit less on the green because It's a little bit bigger size of a flake. You can buy different size flakes. The first two colors were 015 and this one is 035. That 035 is going to be bigger than the 015, but it's not showing up very well, so we're going to add a little bit more in. So we probably have 2/4 teaspoons in there, a little bit less than that, but for sake of conversation, that's pretty close to what we got in there. And now our final color that we're going to add into our cups is the purple. This is 035 as well. So this purple should show up pretty well. Purple likes to pop a little bit inside your baits. So that's kind of what we got going right now, is we have kind of like a 4th of July kind of a color. When I was a kid, we used to throw 4th of July color baits a lot. Had a lot of different blues and reds and greens and purples inside of those colors. And it was basically like a clear kind of a color. We'd throw them on grubs and schooling fish and out in the bay and stuff like that. Now we're going to be adding in our colorant. As you can see, we got soft baits X2 colorant from Do It Molds. It's a watermelon green colorant. We're going to add a few drops in there and see what it looks like. All right, so I added in 6 drops of colorant. So that should give us a kind of a green base to our baits. I want these to be a little bit translucent, so I don't want to overdo it on the green. One thing that's nice about these X2 colorants is they are thick, so a little bit goes a long way. I've had that same bottle of colorant since I started making soft plastics with all these Do It Molds, going back to all these different videos that I've made. Same bottle of colorant the entire time. But as you can see, that 6 drops made a giant difference inside what my cup looks like and what these baits are ultimately going to look like. It's a pretty translucent color, but I think I can go with a little bit more green to just darken it up a little bit. But I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to go with a watermelon brown X2 colorant, so that way it darkens everything up a little bit better. And then for this one, I'm just going to go with 3 drops, and then I'm going to go in there and stir it up. It should darken it up a little bit. It shouldn't take away too much of my translucent color that I'm going for, but it would kind of make it a little bit less green and give it a little bit of a darker hue, which is kind of what I want. I don't want it to be like overly green, but I do want it to be like a watermelon candy color and not so much of a green pumpkin or a brown. I think that looks pretty good, so we're going to heat this up a little bit more so it goes through our injector and into our molds a little bit easier, and then we'll make these baits up. Okay, so now we're at the point where we're going to start making our baits. What you need in order to do that is an injector. This is a single injector, and this is for one color bait. You can get a dual injector that's going to draw up 2 different colors, push it into the same mold, and it's going to give you a 2-color bait. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw up the Plastisol by pulling up the plunger, and then you're going to push this plunger back down once the injector is into the top of the mold, and you're going to press down, push that Plastisol into the mold, and then that mold's going to give the bait its shape. All right, so we have our warm Plastisol. Again, we're going to stir everything up to make sure that our salt gets evenly distributed inside of our Plastisol and inside of that cup. You can feel that salt settle at the bottom of this cup when you first start doing it, and then you can kind of feel it all release. So now we're going to take our injector, draw up that Plastisol. I like to check to make sure we got good flow out of the injector, which we do. Come over to our mold, even pressure down, and you'll feel that injector stop, and you're just going to hold that pressure. Then we're going to top off that sprue. That's the top part. It's called the sprue. Go over to our next one. Again, even pressure down until it stops, and then we're going to hold that pressure. And again, we'll top off that sprue. Now, once you're done putting that Plastisol into your molds, a lot of times you're going to have leftover Plastisol inside your injector. You just go over to your Plastisol cup and you just push the rest of that Plastisol back into that cup, and you can reheat it again for later. It's not all for loss. You can actually take these sprues that we're going to take off here shortly and what's left over inside of that cup once it solidifies, and you can remelt that down later and reuse it to make more baits. Something else you might have noticed when I was making those baits or pouring that stuff into those molds is that there was clamps on the sides of that mold. You want to put clamps on the side of that mold because when you push down on that injector, you're adding pressure into that mold, and there's nothing that's keeping it closed other than the pressure of those clamps. So if you don't put the clamps on there, you can end up pushing the Plastisol between the sides of the mold, and then it just ruins your bait. And when that happens just slightly, it's called flashing. But if you don't put those clamps on there, you're going to end up pushing the Plastisol all over your counter. And then also you got to make sure that you let your Plastisol cool down inside of that mold. If you open it too soon, your bait's not going to be set up inside that mold. It's still going to be runny. It's still going to be tacky. And when you pull it out, it's going to ruin the shape. You want to let it cool for about 2, 3, 4 minutes, depending on how hot everything is. If it's super hot in your garage or wherever you're making these baits, you're going to want to let it set for a little bit longer. If it's super cold where you're making the baits, you're going to be able to take them out a little bit sooner. One thing I like to do in order to check to make sure that these baits are ready to come out of the molds is I just touch the top of the sprue, and if they're still tacky and Plastisol comes onto my glove, I know they're not ready to come out yet. These ones seem like they're ready to come out, so we're going to take these clamps off. Now we're going to open up this smaller 4.5 inch one. And I think these turned out really, really well. That's definitely a good watermelon candy color. Now we're going to check out our 6 inch ones. And again, these turned out really, really well as well. I think it's a really good color. Going to be a great clear water color. I fish a lot of clear water, so I think that these are going to catch them in my local lakes. So the next step in the process is an important one. It's about how you set your plastics down. You want to make sure they're about as straight as you can get them, because these are still not fully cured yet, and you're going to want these baits to stay as straight as possible. Sometimes you're going to need to take the gloves off in order to get everything to lay nice and straight. If they don't lay nice and straight, you're going to end up having crooked baits, and you don't want to fish those crooked baits. If you're just starting out in making soft plastics, or you're considering starting out to make these plastics, head over to the Do It Molds website. Make sure to use my affiliate link so they know that I sent you, and check out the Do It Molds soft plastic starter kits. There's 2 different options to choose from, but basically they're giving you everything that you need in order to get started making soft plastics like this one. Again, if you want to piecemeal it out like I have here in the garage, I'll link a product list down in the description as well, so that way you guys know exactly what I'm using to make these watermelon candy soft plastic worms. I think we need to make at least one more run of these baits, so that way you guys see that this isn't a fluke, that this is something that you can do over and over and over again. All right, so our Plastisol is heated up and we're ready to go. So again, we're going to repeat that same process. We're going to draw up our Plastisol into our injector. Check for the flow, good flow. Come over to our mold, even pressure on down, hold when that injector stops moving. Top off our sprue. Again, on a small one, hold when it stops. You don't got to put a ton of pressure, just a little bit to keep everything flowing in, to make sure that we don't have any air pockets or incomplete pores. Top off the sprue on that guy, and we'll check these out here in a minute. Alright, so again, I'm going to check the top of my sprues. Nothing's coming off onto my gloves, so I know I'm ready to go. Take off these clamps. Gonna open up our 4.5. Kind of fell out a little bit, but that's all right. Color's good overall. Really like it. It's gonna catch them. Now we're gonna go to our 6 inch version. These ones stayed in the mold real well. Great color. Turned out really good. No holes, no air pockets that I can tell. These are gonna catch them, guys. I'm excited to get these out there and fish. All these plastic worms still have this sprue along the top. In order to get these to where you can fish them, obviously you're not going to fish them with that sprue on there. You literally just tear it off. Just like that. Do it again on this one. And on that one. You just tear them right off, and these things are now ready to go fish. Well guys, there's your step-by-step guide on how to make plastic worms. If you want to get into tackle making, make sure to go to the Do It Molds website to check out all their products and use that affiliate link. And don't forget about the description with the product list down there as well. If you guys want to watch more tackle making content, make sure to click on the tackle making playlist that's on the screen right now, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.